Welcome to the Daytona Beach Real Estate Insider, powered by the Daytona Beach Area Association of Realtors. Whether you're a real estate agent or just interested in our local real estate market, we hope this podcast provides value to you. We explore how our local association supports its members and share key tips for navigating Volusia and Flagler County real estate. Stick with us for the next few minutes. You won't want to miss it.
All right, here we are again. I'm Kristin Petersen. I'm the current president of the association this year for Daytona Beach Area Association of Realtors. And I have Erum Kistemaker. Yay, I got it right.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Erum is a 20-plus year attorney, local attorney here, focusing on community association and real property law. She has practiced internationally and nationally, yes. And she is very well respected, especially to this subject of condo law. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because we're in Condoville here in Daytona Beach Shores, yep. Ponce Inlet, all the way up to Flagler. And obviously there's something that happened recently that changed things with condos.
It did, and in response to the Surfside collapse.
Yeah, in Miami.
There's been a lot of legislative changes requiring milestone inspections. Now, these milestone inspections have been going on in South Florida for some time. However, we've sort of codified what they were doing locally in South Florida into the statute to require milestone inspections of all buildings, condominium buildings, and more specifically residential condominium buildings that are 3 stories and higher.
So that includes the 3rd story. So it's not
Yes.
4 and up, it's 3 stories. That's a question, believe it or not. That's
It is
a big question.
And probably that realtors get a lot, and of course as lawyers, but we let the engineers determine the stories. I feel like that's a safer bet, that, the engineer should determine whether you are in fact 3 stories or not. But the statute reads 3 stories and more.
Okay. So let's kind of start from the very beginning, because our audience could be the public, and it could be real estate agents, and it could be us who are kind of in the mix. But obviously the Surfside condo in 2021, the condo that collapsed, is kind of what started this whole thing on a state level to make it a state requirement to have structural integrity.
Yep, SIRS.
It's the SIRS report, which is the reserves as well.
Right.
And I want to get into that. And then also the milestone inspection reports.
Correct.
And so the SIRS report, the structural integrity and reserve studies.
Right. So the SIRS will look more like a reserve study.
Okay.
The real big change there is the difference with the categories. And to kind of keep it simple, we've always had reserves. You've always had reserve studies, but you did not have to have mandatory reserve funds. An owner could waive it. They weren't tied to the structure. So now this is your structural components, whereby you must reserve fund. The owners cannot vote to partially fund or waive the funding of those reserves. You must, because in the wake of Surfside, really what happened at Surfside is the board of directors did not fix what was structurally compromised, which was the rebar with the garage, because they didn't have sufficient funds.
Yeah.
And then what is the biggest upward that you'll see at condominiums is if their assessments are increased. And what I found in the Volusia County, sort of into the Flagler area, problem is I think our condominiums really became fixed income living. Versus you've got a lot of retirees and folks that no longer work that live in these condominiums for retirement purposes, and they live on a fixed income because they're no longer working. They're probably their investments and things like that. They don't want to see their assessments go up. And they're kind of like, hey, we're not going to be living here probably for another 20, 30 years to realize this building looking great. We don't really care about the total value of the building. And those were the owners that consistently would waive funding the reserves.
Push it down the road.
Which is why we have now made it mandatory.
So let's talk about that. First of all, that report, didn't that have to be done by December 2024, or was that extended?
It's all been extended,
Okay.
and now that's the further extension that just happened at special session. So now it's even been extended further.
To when?
To 2026.
Okay, so we're in 2025. This is April 2025 if you're listening to this at a later date. So now let me ask you a question. We've heard in the field, so to speak, that some associations are saying, we're not going to comply with this. We're going to hire an attorney and we're going to sue the state.
With the SIRS or the milestone inspection. So remember, milestone inspection is going to be now enforced by building officials, your local officials, and what that enforcement mechanism is going to look like, none of us really know.
Okay.
As far as the SIRS, the suit and things that are going to happen, sure, they could hire counsel. Counsel may argue that this was a substantive amendment to the statute and that somehow or another their declaration doesn't have magic language, which is called the Kaufman argument. And if your declaration doesn't have language that says any and all amendments, and there's magic language, amendments, future amendments will apply to that association. The legislative law that was in place at the time that the declaration was recorded. So say the declaration was recorded in the 70s. Or 1993.
Yeah, right,
even.
okay. Mm-hmm.
That, how the law read in 1993 is how it applies, versus if it has that magic language, we've incorporated the Act 718 and any amendments thereto.
Okay.
Then all of the statutory amendments that are substantive would apply. It's a very convoluted, difficult argument. If a lawyer is making it on your behalf, please make sure that they are specialized in condo law. And I'm not sure that it's actually going to fly.
Right.
To be seen, nobody has really and then remember, it doesn't become law until it gets appealed. So you've got to go through the entire state court system, get some kind of judgment, and then one of the parties has to appeal it, and then that's what makes it law for us to rely on. That's going to take years.
Yeah. So on these assessments, let's say they go through this and there's this huge, we have to do this huge assessment, which we have seen. We've seen 6-digit assessments. And it seems, I don't know, and I'm asking this question, is there some kind of, law or something that says you can't assess over a certain percentage annual of the budget per year per owner or anything along those lines, because you're getting these 6-digit assessments due in 6 months in 3 payments. Yeah. And these people are going, and you're talking about the people that are on fixed incomes, and they're going, well, what the heck? And now we've got 14 months of inventory of condos on the market.
So the exception to that 115%, the 15% that the budget can't increase that, the exception is reserves.
Oh, okay. So any association can put any amount. Yeah, we're doing this
not
amount.
Any association, any amount. Of course, it's got to be reasonable, and it's going to be tied to that SIRS report. They're not just pulling figures out of the air. They're having their building inspected. They obviously have structural issues that have to be fixed, and they're getting bids and the expert is saying in order the remaining life of X structural component is this, so therefore you should reserve fund this. It's tied to an expert statement. The board isn't just pulling figures out of nowhere. So yes, if they're relying on those experts and there is a figure that they have to meet, yes, they can assess it.
And so
this is a reality, and even with the new amendments that are going through session currently, it's not to get rid of SIRS. It is to allow associations to do what? Borrow money without owner vote or say. The law is serious that they want they want boards to maintain the buildings, make sure that they're structurally sound, and make decisions that increase the value of these condos. I think you'd agree with me. What has been the issue, and why, to some degree, did Volusia and Flagler start looking unsightly when you would go for a walk on the beach?
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. And absolutely. I mean, and it's for the safety and security of all the residents that are living there. It all makes sense. It just seems like it came down fast and hard, and lots of large money floating around, and lots of owners saying, what the heck? And does an owner have a right to go to the association? What if they can't pay? I mean,
what happens.
I know. I'm asking, though, for general public, you don't for
pay,
somebody.
You get foreclosed on.
Yeah, you get foreclosed on. It's
unfortunate, but you don't go to We've got Beyonce living in a condo on South Beach. I really just think condo living's gonna change. You're living on, I think, the most lucrative land. You've got to be able to afford to live on lucrative land.
Right.
You know, unfortunately, people on fixed incomes probably shouldn't be living in a condominium during this current time for maybe the next 5 years. Let this all kind of even out. Let the buildings get fixed. Let the other owners pay the assessments. But I do think...
But then the values are going to go up, and there you go.
I think Volusia County and Flagler, condo living is going to look like South Florida.
Well, you know...
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
It's just a different look. And I had talked about this for even before Surfside happened. Us as lawyers, we're saying we've got to do something. Board of directors aren't making sage and wise decisions to maintain these buildings. Something's got to give and something's got to change.
Well, a lot of the boards, you have part-time directors and people that probably shouldn't be on the board making the decisions. And that's the challenge too. So, the competency level maybe of some of them isn't there. But so it's a good thing that these things are happening because it's forcing them to get expert opinions and expert.
And although it will be difficult for a little while, I think you will see that there will be improvements to our area. I think it will help the taxes in our area. I think these buildings are going to look prettier. And I think overall, once we get through this, it's going to be better for our cities, our people, and our real estate.
Yeah,
I really do.
I agree. And I just think it's such a shock to the people who have you've got a lot of people who've never left Volusia County. They've just been born and raised here. They're used to a certain palette in terms of the money that you pay for property and so forth. And when I moved here in 2008, I walked around saying, what's wrong with this? Why is everything so cheap?
Right.
Really. Because it was so inexpensive. You could buy a house or a bungalow or something, walk to the beach for, in 2008, it was $60,000, $70,000 for a bungalow. Wow. And then now they're $200,000-$300,000. And the condos you could pick up for nothing. And still right now with almost 14 months of inventory, you can pick up a condo for almost nothing because these owners that you were talking about are just saying, take it off my hand basically, right?
Now I know
if you're a buyer, right now of a condo, and I know you have your opinion.
Yeah.
Don't buy a condo. But if you are, let's say your dream, you live in Nebraska and your dream has been to own an oceanfront condo for the rest of your life and your retirement and everything else. What should you be looking out for in buying a condo right now in Volusia County, which it is a really good deal to buy a condo
Number
right now.
one, I would not buy cash right now. I would make sure, because when you buy cash, the things that a mortgage company will do to protect you and title insurance, they almost are dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
You are 100% right
so
there.
Number one, I would try to go through a conventional mortgage process because they're going to make sure they're protecting their money,
correct.
Which means they're going to protect you.
Yeah.
I would 100% hire a good brokerage, a local brokerage in town because they know our area. And I would have a good real estate agent who knows what they're doing with regards to condos. I would ask, how many condos have you sold? How experienced are you with condominiums? And then with those experts that you have hired, you need to do a full review of the financials, the reserves. I would get that milestone report. Did they do the SIRS? And remember how you were like, there's some of these associations that are just saying they're not going to comply. Those are red flags.
Yeah, obviously.
I'd walk away from that.
Now, when you say I think a lot of people, I know I've sold condos in the past and there's no way that the owner actually read the financials and the research. They don't know how to read them. Some of them are very difficult to read. So
they are.
How do you read them? How do you really know what you're looking at? Do you need to go get an attorney to do that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And
especially
you probably
now.
should.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're probably going to get into a condo and may regret it. And, once you buy, it's very, very difficult to get out of it as for specific performance. And if an association has not assessed, there's a problem. That's a red flag. Right? So if you see one that they haven't significantly increased their assessments, what are they doing? Did they not have insurance? Did they not do that milestone inspection? Why are they not, They probably don't have reserves that are properly funded.
Yeah.
So I would look at that. I would get the last 12 months meeting minutes, the notices that were sent for those meetings, and look at the agenda and see if there's been any discussion about the special assessments. That's a lot easier. I would start with that, and then getting milestone inspection is not that difficult to read. The reserves are, but you can also hire that company that maybe wrote it for it. There's lots of reserve specialists around that you could hire as a consultant to decipher what the report says. But I think that you need to do due diligence in that fashion if you're buying a condo, if you want to protect yourself. Now, some people are risky,
and as a real estate agent, you don't want to be the interpreter of that information.
No, because you're not an expert in that. Your expertise is to guide them through the process to get them the right attorney and maybe a reserve specialist to interpret that. But no, how could you?
Right, exactly.
You could certainly read minutes, you could read notices and agendas, but no, that's like, hey, we're telling you what information to gather. We can't interpret it.
Okay.
Understanding the governing documents is also very important. A lot of people, you get your condo rider, they need to read those condo riders.
Right.
They need to read the seller's disclosures. Agents, you need to get those seller's disclosures. I can't tell you how many as-is contracts I've seen, and there's no seller's disclosure, which is crazy because that's mandatory.
Yeah, you can make your contract contingent on a seller completing a seller disclosure if there's not one up front. So that's probably a really good idea, especially on a condo. Yeah.
Understand those governing documents that they provide to you. I know that they're cumbersome, but people need to read them. So it's very important to understand what you're getting into.
What am I not asking you that as
quick
an attorney?
Deals probably shouldn't be happening. You
Quick
know how
deals,
we'd see like 30-day deals.
Yeah. Well,
what you're going to see in a
normally
cash
we
deal.
do close within 30 days. I mean, 30 days is a reasonable closing time with due diligence of a 10-day inspection, something along that line.
Yeah, but what about with the financials now? Because you're going to get those 3 days before closing with an estoppel, and they're going to send you 100 documents.
Well, hopefully you don't get the financials 3 days prior to closing. I mean,
hope
again,
not.
You can structure,
I've
and I'm
seen that.
talking to real estate agents here, you can structure your deal up front to be contingent on receiving that stuff right up front within a certain amount of days versus waiting until the very end and getting slammed in the end and then fighting for your escrow deposit when you're trying to get out. So you need to know how to write an effective contract.
And those escrow disputes go on.
Well, they
can. So, and I would just engage the proper experts.
Yeah. So it's worth, obviously, in these circumstances, from what we're talking about, if you're a buyer out there in the general public and you're thinking about buying a condo, I would say right now, I mean, with so much inventory that we have in the condo market, you could probably find a really good deal for yourself. Just doing your due diligence and making sure that you spend maybe a little extra time and money on having someone else, that third party like yourself, looking at the reserve study and making sure you know what you're getting into, reading the minutes and having all the documents.
But just for people to know, if they're looking for an attorney that does this kind of law, there's a handful of us in Volusia and Flagler. We're going to be very busy. So don't assume that you can call, certainly not my office. You're not going to call my office and be like, hey, can I engage you?
I'll just track you down on John Anderson somewhere.
Yeah. No. But we get a lot of those calls where they're like, can you work on this tomorrow? I've got closing by Friday. And how can we? We're never going to be able to do a good job for them. I take, what I do very seriously. I want to do the best job that I can. I know very few lawyers that don't have their next 2 weeks planned.
Yeah.
As far as I've got this project, I've got this amount of consults. So it's also to keep that in mind. If you're relying on experts that really know what they're doing in the field, they're going to be busy. So don't assume that you can turn around and find somebody to look at that reserve study in 2-3 days. So just to remember, that. Also, the biggest right and responsibility that a condo owner has is really get to know who you're purchasing it from, because they have the right to go ask for all of this from the association by way of inspection of the books and records.
I really want the owners to hear that, owners of condos, because we run into circumstances where the owner of the condo has stated, my association isn't sharing this with me. I can't get the information. I'm sorry, I can't get it. You can, and they're telling the agent, you can try to get it for me, and that kind of thing. It's really the onus is on the owner.
Onus is on the owner, and of course they've gotten notices for board meetings. Of course you have, and then owners think that they don't have to disclose because they didn't attend the board meeting. That doesn't sound like a great excuse to me. If you're getting noticed, you have a duty to know what's going on at your condo. You don't get to just say, hey, I didn't go to the meeting, because guess what? You were noticed that the meeting was going on and there's minutes. And that is as an attorney, if I'm going to represent a new owner that's purchased, and if I believe the owner has not made a proper seller's disclosure, the way that I find that out is I go back and review the minutes, the notice, and the agenda over the course of the last 12 months. And we have found where board members are the seller, treasurer, and secretary take in the minutes and still not disclose that they're going to have a restoration project and that there's going to be
They're just trying to get out and run.
multi-million-dollar special assessment. And we've already settled 3 cases like that.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I that's my fear being on the real estate side as a manager, and, you know, at a company is the lawsuits coming down the road. You know,
remember with agents, read that case, Johnson v. Davis. Read the case about sellers' non-disclosure and the Florida statute that brokers have to comply with to ensure that the sellers make competent disclosures. It's important. And Johnson v. Davis is very clear if it materially affects and you've not disclosed it. And of course, an assessment and a restoration project is going to materially affect the unit and its value due to the fact that most of these restoration projects are displacing the use of the unit.
Right.
And many people buy these for what? Investments. And if you can't rent it out, that's a lot of loss of income.
Yeah.
So
now,
and how hard is it to get the last 12 months of minutes and notices? But the owner should be able to get that because
the owner should be able to get that. You're right.
It's not even
it's
the
published.
owner should be able to. They do, and if it's not published, they have a right pursuant to 718 to inspect and copy the books and records. All minutes, all notices, all agendas are part of the books and records.
So you're scaring me, Erum, but at the same time, let me tell you, it's still a good market for condos.
It's an interesting market for condos.
Homework. You have to do your homework. I mean, I'm just saying that because with so much inventory brings price compression, obviously with the assessments and or whatever's going to be going on out there. You know, that's the time that if you really want that dream property, you can get it. You just need to know what you're getting into.
Or, you know, then you haggle with the people and say, listen, you need to sell it for a lot less because I'm taking on all this risk. So I really think that's where you're going to see the market. It's almost like a foreclosure market. Yeah. So could the condo market be really great? Some of these people, listen, it didn't pass that special session to help the elderly that were in the position that they could not pay the special assessment, that the government was going to give some of that money. I didn't see that pass. I don't think that's going to pass during regular session this go round. If people don't have the money to pay the assessments, they're going to have to get out because if they don't pay the assessment, they're going to be foreclosed on. I would start looking at some of these foreclosures. I think in the next year, 2 years, you're going to see more condo foreclosures. And I do think a lot of the people that are on the fixed income are going to have to sell. And this dream of selling they thought that their unit had increased 3-4-fold. Probably didn't, but a lot of them probably did buy for the $200,000, $300,000 and can sell it for and pay off their mortgage and just be done with it.
Right.
And what's interesting is you guys are going to have to find all of these people that are moving out of the condos places to live.
Yes, this is true. And so that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
But it's out there. Yeah, it's out there. And so we're talking about, once again, condos that, isn't it, I don't know why I've got 3 miles on my brain. 3 miles from the coast? No, there's no rule like that.
That went away. That was in the first iteration when it was the very first iteration, then 4D changed that.
Okay. That brain cell just came traveling around the front again.
And so what's being considered at session right now is potential financial relief for condo owners, recognizing the financial strain these requirements may impose, particularly on senior residents. Some legislators are proposing measures to alleviate the burden. For instance, State Senator Rosalind Osgood has announced plans to introduce legislation aimed at easing the financial impact on condo owners, especially retirees on fixed incomes. I don't know if that's going to go through.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting. And the implications are obviously increased assessment and fees. So what's the most important thing? You're buying a condo, look at what discussions have they had for special assessments over the course of the last 12 months. And if there's been no conversation, red flag, move on, move to the next condo.
Yeah.
There's plenty.
Yeah, there is. There's plenty. And we can find them for you, all the real estate agents out there in Volusia County. But yeah, don't dabble in condos right now. You know, you either know what you're doing or there's a lot of other property to sell too.
Yeah,
right?
and there's all kinds of, development that are coming up. I mean, on top of it, condos have real issues with insurance right now. A lot of these increases you were seeing in the assessments don't just have to do with this legislation. It's because of the condo insurance market.
They're going short on their insurance too, which is a problem on the mortgage side.
Yes,
so
it is.
You're absolutely correct. If you really want to protect yourself, get a mortgage. Don't pay cash.
Yeah,
because the mortgage companies are going to dig into it for you as well.
And hopefully those rates are going to come down soon. So, I still think it's a great market. I don't think condos are clearly not going anywhere. I obviously love it. I mean, it's my bread and butter, condo law. I just think who lives in them is going to look different, especially in Volusia and Flagler, which I also don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
No, I don't think so either. I think, it's needed, right?
It's needed.
And so it's going to be good overall for the whole community.
It's very interesting how many condo owners you'll talk to and they'll be like, oh, the condominium can't tell me to do this. Or I moved into an HOA. They can't tell me to do this. And it's like, do you not know what you bought into?
Right.
But people need to get used to associations, what those look like, what living in an association looks like, because I don't see it going away. I think you're going to see a lot more association living. I haven't seen one development that's gone up as of recently in Flagler and or Volusia that isn't tied to an association.
Yep, you're right. Well, all good information.
Thank you so much.
My, that's a loaded one, isn't it, everybody?
We can certainly do a part 2 after.
You know
I
what?
think
that would
should.
be great. We should definitely after the session.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds great. I really appreciate you coming in. You're awesome.
Yeah,
I know
you
you've
too.
got a lot going in your brain. You're probably like, oh my God, I got so much more to say. So, but we want to keep it drive time,
Yep.
So, thanks for coming in. And part 2 to be determined.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daytona Beach Real Estate Insider. We hope you found today's episode helpful. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. And don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest news and tips. Until next time, happy house hunting.